if your parents found out you were going into computers in the 80s, they thought you were like going to go be a professional player of Dungeons and Dragons, right? Yeah. They mourned for you. They didn't realize. And really what happened was, I mean, two things. One was, one of us, it turned out, Grateful Dead lyricist John Barlow was, it turns out he was also a libertarian of the hippie kind. And he wrote this document called the Declaration of Independence of Cyberspace. And he wrote it at a very particular moment when most of us involved in computers were really angry at government. They were arresting young hackers, like 12, 13, 14-year-old kids, because they didn't understand what the little hackers were doing, and companies were afraid of getting hacked. We had Tipper Gore and the Decency Act, and she was concerned for kids to be playing violent video games. And so government looked like the bad guys. And Barlow came along and said, governments of the world, get off the net. We're here. We're going to take this up. We don't need you. What we didn't realize as little psychedelic hippie raver kids, at the time, was you get rid of government, you create a free reign for corporations. Right. That government and corporations kind of balance each other out like bacteria and fungus do in the body, right? You get rid of the bacteria and the fungus go wild. So we created this space for corporations to go. And then Wired magazine came and reframed the internet really as a economic, as a finance revolution. That's what they said, that we're going to go into this thing called the long boom, that thanks to digital technology, the surface area of the marketplace was going to become infinite, right? Because the web can go forever. And they said that because of these technologies, the market will grow exponentially, uninterrupted, forever. But once you're looking at technology less as a way to unleash the capabilities of the connected collective human imagination and more as a way to make money, then you're not looking to unleash creativity. What you're looking for is to increase probability, right? You're now betting on particular technologies. You're betting on a technological future. So you want the highest probability that the thing you're betting on is going to make 100x or 1000x. So we really reverse the polarity of technology. Instead of making technology for people to do hitherto unknown things, we started using technology on people to get them to do the most predictable things, right? So that's when all the techniques of behavioral finance and marketing and psychology started to be employed by technology to make websites sticky, to increase the number of eyeball hours you spent, and ultimately to modify human behavior to get us to do the statistically most probable actions, each of us, so sort of shaving off, kind of auto-tuning humanity to the notes that they want to see us play and leaving all that in-between stuff out.
It also seems to me, as you talk about that it created a notion of like infinite resources, or that there was there's an infinite quality that somehow, like, at one point people forgot, like, oh wait, we're talking about the digital theoretical world, not the real world. But that's like, it's almost like that sort of concept bled into like this notion of, well, we could just do this forever. Like, it doesn't matter. As long as we're getting Bitcoins out of it, it really doesn't matter what we're doing in terms of the energy being used.
Right. And the problem is reality just can't scale, right? To the extent that digital can. Digital, right, is numbers. So you can get a number like Google on a computer, right? I don't know if you can calculate it yet, but you can think in those kinds of terms. But there's only so many atoms and humans and air on this little planet, right? So it doesn't ultimately match, right? The object of the game in the digital media environment is to scale. Talk about any business, even a charity, like, oh, I've got this new way for people to really, use permaculture farming in their community. Well, yeah, but does it scale? It's like,
right.
Does reality scale? No, it doesn't. Right.
Well, that's a problem with capitalism, right? Where it's like, right, the entire sort of the only thing that's on the menu are things that can ultimately be profitable for the capitalist, as opposed to things on the menu that will be sort of beneficial for people. Right. Those are, sometimes they intersect. And a lot of times I feel like the tech world sort of feels like there's a one-to-one relationship between those things, or there can be. But I mean, the reality is, like, I don't know, you could look across any type of we've got medical innovations that would save, I think, a lot of lives and different, but it's just, it couldn't produce it in a way that would make money for somebody, and no one's willing to invest in it. And this is across the board.
Right. But if your underlying assumption is that whatever this is, civilization and technology can grow exponentially forever, then you have to start looking at people and the planet as something that, like the first stage of a rocket that gets left behind when we move up. And guys like Musk and Thiel and Sam Bankman-Fried and these folks, they subscribe to this idea called effective altruism, which is that the hundreds of trillions of post-human life forms that will one day be spread throughout the galaxy are worth more than the 8 billion mere larval humans that are on the planet today. And if we've got to sacrifice, the quality of life of these ones for that future, then, so be it. As long as the 20 billionaires, who are
right
out there, don't have to suffer anything.
It's convenient to call that altruism, I'd say. I think it's quite convenient.
Effective, right.
Yeah, and effective. It's been convenient for both.
Right.
So fundamentally, like, what is the fundamental problem that we face in this context, and what are, how do we, I guess, address it? After all that, like, that is like, what is the, billionaires bad? If it was up to me, I would institute a tax that would prevent them from becoming billionaires, and I would retroactively say, like, we're going to give you 6 more months of having fun, but then we're going to take that money back. And maybe get 3 months. I don't know, whatever it is you want to do. If you want to send yourself up into a rocket to Mars, go for it. Just do it within 3 months, because we're taking the rest of the money.
Yeah, that'd be nice. In some ways it does sound simplistic, but when you actually say it, billionaires bad, almost by definition, they are, right? Billionaires are living at a scale that is inappropriate to the reality in which we live. And then it engenders them thinking about our world at scale in a way that doesn't work. So that even now, as they take over philanthropy, when you want to come up with an idea of something that's going to help people, they want to know, we'll give you $100 million if this is a world-changing moonshot idea that operates at scale. Right? If it just saves a neighborhood or a particular lake or a particular indigenous group of people, well, that didn't scale, right? So they can only think in that way, which is sort of the danger, is we become a very brittle civilization if we think in that way too. So part of my job, the reason I wrote kind of a funny takedown black comedy about these guys is not that they will read it and change their ways, but that, the hundreds of millions of people, who might be aspiring to be one of them realize, oh, these guys are the fools, not the winners. They are the deep, deep losers. Their experience of life is just awful, and their solutions won't work, right? So then what can we do instead? And how much more fun would it be to invest in your community and meet real people and not feel the need to escape, all the time? It couldn't feel fun.
I am not convinced that we're not the losers. Not in the sense of like, just in terms of like just the sheer equation of it. Bill Gates drops $1 billion into education and 10, 15 years ago, and derails public education in this country for at least 2 decades because he thought he had an idea. And for him to expend that $1 billion and the commensurate money that chased after it is just like, it's like me, like, do I want a 2016 or a 2018 Subaru? Like, what, like, that's the big debate. And for him, $1 billion is like that. That seems to me like we all end up losing because that power is so concentrated.
Yeah. And it's hard, right? It's hard. He's also the biggest agricultural landowner in America right now, too, because he's got an idea about how farming should work, I guess, how food should work. Hopefully it's a good one.
Well, honestly, like, should we really just have one guy who just has the means to make this decision? Should it be just one guy making these type of like broad decisions that will impact the trajectory of the earth? That's like what it seems to me. They just want, it's like they want to be, Zeus.
Yeah, they do. I mean, or literally. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg wants to be Augustus Caesar. And while we should be thankful he's modeling himself after Augustus rather than Caligula, it's still a Roman dictator, right? It's not.
That can always change, too, I guess.
But
he can wake up one morning.
Yeah. Well, who knows once Meta keeps losing money, right, on virtual reality or whatever garbage else.
Exactly. But we can diminish their power to some extent, though, by not buying all their stuff. By not living on Twitter, by not adopting their mindset as our own, it's pretty easy, it's simple. Like if you got to hang a picture on the wall in your house, the first thing most of us are going to do is go to Home Depot and get a minimum viable product drill, right? That we're going to use once to drill that hole, stick it in the garage, and then it's never going to charge again, and we're going to throw it out, right? So we send kids into the mines to get their earth metals to make the things. We throw the thing in a toxic waste heap in Brazil, where some, other kids are going to be looking for a renewable product, when we could have gone to the neighbor and borrowed a drill. And that's all I'm asking people to just start borrowing and sharing with each other. It takes so much weight off this endless consumption. And when I brought that up, I just brought that up at a conference. Just borrow a drill from your neighbor. Someone got up and said, well, yeah, but what about the people who work at the drill company? What happens to them?
Right.
And what happens to them was you realize, well, maybe they could work 4 or 3 days a week instead of 5.
Right.
What if we don't need... See, right now, we don't have jobs in order to get work done. We have jobs in order to justify letting a person participate in the spoils of capitalism, right? So it's totally ass backwards, where we are serving this economic model rather than the other way around. So let's take a little bit of that programmer, hacker, open source ethos and say, oh, if everything is up for discussion, then why don't we challenge the fundamental rule set of corporate capitalism? That's the one thing all of these disruptive technologists never question, right? I'm going to disrupt this industry. I'm going to disrupt that one. But it's like, well, what about the operating system that you've accepted as a fact of nature, right? Which is that we live in a marketplace. We don't. We live in a commons. And how would you orchestrate that with your technology, buddy? And that's where it would get interesting.